I've seen a few people share before we begin. Okay, I can see some people beginning to join, so we shall get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining this session, joining Map Camp today. I've already had three just wonderful sessions, and it's notable to me that the last question in the last session that I shared was just that. We were talking about change. We went through three different transformations that had different characteristics in terms of the people, in terms of the context. And at the end of the discussion, we was just sitting there talking about what commonalities there were between them. And we had one question come up, a really great question, which was, hey, has anybody ever mapped the acceptance of change? And so we have Sarah Kaiser, who's an experienced and tenured map camper and mapper, who's going to talk to us about adaptive socio-technical systems with architecture for flow. Lovely title. She comes along with not just maps, but with some surrounding tooling, which was really around getting people to understand what she was trying to do. And I think these are really useful tools. So I'm hoping, Susanne, you're going to open source these and share these with everybody, or at least allow everybody to copy and steal, because as we go through your presentation, I think the value will become clear. So Susanne is an engineer, but she does deal in the world of people and processes. So you won't see much code, or, you'll see representations of infrastructure, but it's very much a talk around the directional flow of people and how we effectively get efficiency within change. So I'll stop there, Susanne, and allow you to introduce yourself and get started. But thank you very much for joining us. If you could just start with a little bit about your background and perhaps what it was that inspired you to bring this problem, this set of observations to us today.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction, Damien. Yeah, so it's very lovely to be here. And thank you all of you for joining this session about adaptive socio-technical systems with architecture for flow. And usually I notice that I usually never introduce myself at talks, because I have so much material to share. So there's usually little time for myself, but now I do a little exception. So I'm really happy to introduce myself to you. So I am Susanne Kaiser. I am located in Hamburg at a different time zone right now, in north of Germany. And I am an independent tech consultant. So my career started in, decades ago, studying computer sciences. I was pretty involved in software development for a couple of years, decades, I would say. So I like to also develop and engineer solutions, and it evolved over the time with a further interest in software architecture. And also, at a time, I was also a startup CTO, where I also had to not only software architecture, but also building teams around it, and also combining it with business strategies. And what I'm sharing with you today evolved gradually over the time. So at the beginning, I was started with domain-driven design when I was a startup CTO, migrating a monolithic big ball of mud into microservices. And then serverless technologies came up. And the funny thing is, at every serverless technology conference I attended, Simon Wardley was there giving a keynote, and I was sitting in the first row oh, that sounds amazing. But how do I apply it to my own context? So that's how I started, being curious about Wardley mapping and how to apply it to my own context. That I then also combined domain-driven design with Wardley mapping, and then I guess, end of 2019, the book Team Topologies about team organization came up, and I was thinking, oh, that is the missing part that I need in order to focus on adaptive socio-technical systems and to have a holistic tool set that helps us to designing, building, and evolving adaptive socio-technical systems. So sorry for the long introduction. So that's how it evolved over the time. And I would love to share with you today how to bring those techniques together. So I'm happy to start if so when building systems in general, we are facing the challenges between building the right thing and also building the thing right, and building the right thing that addresses effectiveness and addresses questions such as how aligned is our solution to our user needs? Are we generating value for our customers? And have we understood the problem, and do we share a common understanding? And on the other side, building the thing right focuses on efficiency, for example, efficiency of our engineering practices. And it's not only crucial to generate value, but also being able to deliver that value to our customers. And it's on how fast can we deliver changes, and how fast and easy can we make a change effective and adapt to new circumstances. And the one does not go without the other, but as Dr. Russell Eckhoff, one of the pioneers of the system thinking movement, stated that doing the wrong thing right is not nearly as good as doing the right thing wrong. Or as John Cutler says, crap delivered quickly is still crap, unless we learn something from it and act on that learning. So in order to build the right thing right, we need to build adaptive socio-technical systems that are optimized for fast flow of sustainable value and constant feedback. And one approach that can help us with this is combining Wardle mapping, domain-driven design, and team topologies, which are phrased as architecture for flow. And to bring these techniques together, I developed an opinionated structured approach that is visualized in an architecture for flow canvas, which I would like to share with you today. And this architecture for flow canvas that reflects your as-is situation, your status quo. That's where we're starting, and also involves the envision to be situation in the future. And this canvas is not a rigid framework. It's just like gives you as little structure as necessary that can be complemented with other tools as well. And it usually typically starts with your teams where they are right now. It starts with your teams of today, including the current pain points, and then also we'll switch then to or end with the teams of tomorrow. And also use then Wardle maps. You see it along this talk is where I use Wardle map as a foundation that connects these techniques together. So we always come back to a Wardle map as well. So when we start with the teams of today and their way of working, we described what are the current teams and how are they organized, how do the teams depend on each other in the flow of work, and how do they interact, how big are the current teams in terms of team sizes, and what parts of the system do they currently own. And coming from the team overview, one of the next steps could also be assessing the current flow of change. And to build the thing right, to address the efficiency, we need to optimize for fast flow of change. So where a piece of work or a piece of change itself flows from the idea to the right, to delivering then value to our customers through our system within an ideal case, not without interruptions, or with as little interruption as possible. And optimizing for fast flow of change, that involves also assessing the current flow of changes and identifying on the one side what currently blocks us in our flow of change. So what would we like to minimize? And also on the other side, also identify what works well. So what works well in our flow and what we would like to keep. And analyzing those blockers to flow can be done from various perspectives. Just as a suggestion, you can also add your own perspective as well. So that is the major perspective that I came up during my client engagements. So for example, from a team ownership perspective, if the teams do not fully own the entire end-to-end flow, and end-to-end flow means in this case, like from designing, developing, testing, releasing, and running the parts of the system they are responsible for. So if they don't own the full end-to-end flow, they depend on other teams' activities and other teams' tasks to get their own work done. So they then need to repeatedly hand over work to other teams at a later stage of flow, so in order to get their own work completed. But handover requires a high amount of communication and coordination effort between teams, and then potentially also introduce wait times and also delays affecting our own flow of change. And if teams are missing capabilities and if they are missing skills, they need to bring in people with specific expertise in order to do something to get their own work completed. That can also impede the flow of change, particularly when the people aren't available when we need them. And every dependency requires some level of communication and coordination. So each team has their own backlog, their own priorities. And that also increases then the probability of wait times and delay if we have to wait for them. And particularly when the people that we depend on, when they are not available, or when or the teams that we depend on, if they can't keep up with the demands placed on them, and they might be overloaded, so they then become constrained and slowing down the overall performance. So if teams have to interact with many other teams in order to get their own work completed, that is potentially slowing down the flow of value. And from a software architecture point of view, tight change coupling in software architecture, that impedes the flow of change as well. So for example, as changes in one part of the system can have then unpredictable side effects on other parts, which also then increases then the risk of breaking things and introducing defects and a lot of rework as well. And also from a software quality perspective, like if we are facing a high level of technical debt, for example, caused by doing shortcuts, doing poorly written code, lack of tests, pattern violations, huge code complexity, that could lead then to fragile code bases that is hard to maintain long term. And a messy architecture with blurry and fuzzy boundaries, that makes it very difficult to establish clear ownership boundaries. And that also leads to lack of ownership, which decreases then the accountability, potentially leading to not my job syndrome. And that can cause decision delays and impeding our flow of change as well. And with business logic mingled together in a messy model and with no clear modularity boundary, that also could increase our mental effort to understand a piece of code, including also grasping the dependency in a large intertwined system, and could also lead to teams owning too many or too large intertwined parts of our system. And when teams own too many or too large intertwined parts of the system, that including a high level of technical debt, that could exceed the team's cognitive load. And if the team's cognitive load is largely exceeded, then it becomes a delivery bottleneck. And when teams lack priorities and focus, they often try to work on multiple tasks at once, resulting in higher work in progress, jumping between tasks and without completing them. And with frequent interruptions and unplanned work, that forces the team members to do a lot of context switches, which also impedes our flow of changes. So after we have addressed the current teams and their pain points in form of blockers to flow, we also need to understand the current landscape and the users and the user needs. And that's where we come blending in smoothly the water map. So to build the right thing, as I mentioned in the beginning, the effectiveness on the left side, to build the right thing, that requires to start from the user perspective. So Clayton Christensen, the inventor of the jobs to be done theory, he stated that people buy products and services to get a job done. So in order to help users to get their job done, we need to know who our users are and what jobs they want to accomplish. So we need to identify the desired outcomes as user needs that they want to achieve, that our users want to achieve when getting a job done. And the jobs to be done and the user needs, they describe the problem space and typically stay the same regardless of how the user needs are going to be solved in the solution space. So our users don't care how we are solving it. if we're just throwing AI on it or not, as long as we have fulfilled the user needs, and so that they can accomplish their jobs. So to give you an example, let's say we use an example of an online school solution for junior students, and one of the user types are the teachers, and the teacher's core functional job is to facilitate remote learning. To accomplish this job, the teachers would like to prepare learning material. They would like to assess the student understanding, for example, with assignments. They would like to track the students' progress over time. They would like to facilitate communication with the students, and also ensure and set up a secure access to the learning platform, for example, with through sign up and sign in processes. And in the solution space, those user needs are directly or indirectly fulfilled by a chain of components that generates value for our users by satisfying those user needs. And that's where we can blend in the value chain, the y-axis of our water map, where the users and the user needs are representing the anchor of the map. So in deriving this value chain helps us to ensure that we are addressing the right problems and that we are creating value that aligns with user needs. And also the value chain shows how different components connect in order to generate value and visualize also their dependencies. And we can start simple with just a few components or just one user type and a few components and iterate later on. And these components of our value chain then typically map to the evolution stages on the x-axis, such as genesis with brand new things, then custom build, product and rental, such as off-the-shelf products and open source software solution, and commodity and utility at the right. And each of these evolution stages come with different characteristics. So towards the left spectrum, the components are changing far more frequently than components are towards the right spectrum, towards commodity and utility. And on the left, towards Genesis, we are dealing with high level of uncertainties, unknown unknowns, undefined, poorly understood market, while the components towards the right spectrum, towards commodity and utility, the components become more stable, known, widespread, standardized, and the markets are typically well-defined and mature. And we can use this water map that helps us then to generate or create a common understanding of the business landscape. And usually when creating this in a group, so we have this common understanding within this group. And it also helps to assess efficiency gaps. So one of the core questions that I ask, are we custom building components that do not belong to our core domain? Or can we utilize further evolved components? So the map helps to identify areas where to invest and innovate, and also what to evolve or outsource to gain competitive advantage. And I typically use this water map as a visual tool that guides us through the optimization by blending in patterns and practices from domain-driven design and team topologies. So coming from the as-is situation, we are now gradually blending into the to-be situation by categorizing the problem space. And categorizing the problem space, blending in smoothly domain-driven design, bridges the status quo, the as-is, with the future's landscape, the to-be situation. So, and that's where we can blend in domain-driven design. So the users and user needs are not only representing the anchor of our water map, but also representing the problem domain. And domain-driven design helps us to gain a shared understanding of our problem domain and helps us to partition our problem domain into smaller parts, the subdomains. But not all subdomains are equal. Some are more valuable to our business than others. So we have different types of subdomains. For example, the core domain, that is the essential part of our problem domain, providing a competitive advantage. And that is the subdomain we have to strategically invest in most. And that's the one that we should build in-house. And the supporting subdomain, they help to support, as the name indicates, that helps to support the core domain and complement the core domain's offering. So they do not provide competitive advantage, but are necessary for the organization to succeed and are typically prevalent, typically existing in other competitive solutions as well. So the core domain is typically non-differentiating, but has the characteristics of being very specialized. So, and if we have highly customizable products in the market or open source software solutions, then we can look out for buying or using those off-the-shelf or open source software solutions for the supporting subdomains. But if the supporting subdomains can't be productized, then because it requires a high level of specialization, then we should custom build the supporting subdomains, but being aware that these are not providing competitive advantage. Generic subdomains, these are subdomains that many business systems have. For example, authentication and registration. So they exist, they aren't core and they provide no competitive advantage, but the business systems cannot work without them. So they are generic subdomains that are neither specialized nor differentiating. And so we can then focus on buying or using off-the-shelf products, open source software solution, or outsourcing to utility suppliers for the generic subdomain related components. So the subdomain types they help to focus our strategic efforts and investments on our core domain related bounded context. I come to bounded context in a second, and support us to build, buy, and outsource decisions. So far, we have addressed the problem space, and we have partitioned our problem space into subdomain types. Now we want to model also to achieve modularity in our solution space. But in the solution space at the current situation, our subdomains are all mingled together in a monolithic big ball of mud with a messy model and no clear modularity boundaries in our example of the online school solution. And a big ball of mud with messy model and no clear modularity boundaries is causing tight change coupling. And also causes lack of clear ownership and high team cognitive load and an inefficient focus of development effort also on non-differentiating parts that are affecting our flow and efficiency. So to unlock these blockers to flow, we might want to consider to leverage modularity with high functional cohesion and also loose coupling by designing a modular, well-encapsulated, loosely coupled system. And that's where we come to the next part of domain-driven design. So that requires to decompose our monolithic big ball of mud into modular components, which brings us then to bounded contexts of domain-driven design. And bounded context groups related business behavior together. So a bounded context defines where a single domain model can be applied, encapsulating a particular business logic of a specific subdomain. And bounded contexts are also enforcing high cohesion and modularity from a business behavior point of view. And bounded contexts also indicate good domain logic specific seams to split our system into smaller, modular, well-encapsulated parts. So, and they also serve very well as ownership boundaries. I come back to that one when we address then the team perspective. So, designing bounded context and domain models, they involve a close collaboration between domain experts and development teams and gaining a shared understanding of the domain. And there exists also different techniques, for example, event storming, domain storytelling, example mapping, and so on. So, and when we have categorized our problem space into subdomain types like core, supporting, generic, and modularized our solution space with a bounded context, we can also bring them back to a Wortley map to visualize our future landscape. And so with the previously discovered subdomain types and the modular, well-encapsulated bounded context, then we can also better target our strategic investment in the solution space. So the question is then that we also can focus our major development efforts around our core domain-related bounded context providing competitive advantage by building them in-house. And for non-differentiators, we need to evaluate whether we can leverage existing solutions. Or are the non-differentiators, for example, in this example, these supporting subdomain-related bounded contexts, are they so specialized that they can't be productized and then require custom development? And whether we could leverage further evolved components need to assess for the entire value chain, not only restricted to our bounded context, but also reflecting also components of our entire value chain in order to increase efficiency. And in our example, we could decide to migrate our on-premise infrastructure components to cloud-hosted services available as commodities in order to close our previously identified efficiency gaps. So far, we have unlocked blockers to flow that are related to software architecture and efficiency gaps. But considering now the socio-technical part of our system, we also need to bring in the team perspective to unlock the obstacles to flow in regards to team ownership, team dependencies, and also interaction between teams. And that's where we come to the last section of our architecture for flow canvas, and where team topology can help us with a well-defined team types and interaction modes to drive then the future team organization. And to those, give you a very short, quick intro to team topologies for those that have not read the book. So team topologies introduce a set of well-defined team types and interaction modes. So these autonomous cross-functional streamlined teams, they are aligned to a continuous stream of work and focusing on a fast flow of change. But to be able to produce a steady flow of feature deliveries, to be able to focus on a fast flow of change, they need the support from the other teams, for example, from platform teams. And platform teams support then the streamlined teams on delivering them, support them delivering them their work, and are responsible for platforms that the streamlined teams can easily consume. And the platform itself, or the types of platform, can vary in their level of abstraction. So at a lower level, we can abstract away infrastructure, networking, cross-cutting capabilities. And at a higher level, a platform can also reflect a design system or a data platform, machine learning, and more. So the platform teams, they provide internal self-service services and tools for using that platform they are responsible for. Or they can get support from the enabling team that engage as internal coaches within the organization and help then to identify and acquire missing capabilities, upskilling the other teams. Or they can get support from the complicated subsystem teams as an optional team type, and they are supporting then the streamlined teams on particular complicated subsystems that requires very specialized knowledge, for example, face recognition engines, video encodings, and something like that. And they all aim for increasing the autonomy and reducing the cognitive load of the streamlined teams in order at the end to enable a fast flow of change. But to arrange these teams and these team types is not enough to become effective. How these teams are interacting with each other and when to change and evolve the interaction between teams is also very important and very relevant for high organizational effectiveness and efficiency. So with collaboration, teams are working very closely together, but only over a limited period of time. And this is suitable for rapid discovery and innovation, for example, when exploring new technologies together. But collaboration is meant to be short-lived. And X is a service that suits well when one team needs a code library, a component, an API, or platform that can be effectively provided by another team as a service, and works best where predictable delivery is needed. Facilitation, that is the interaction mode that comes into play when one team would benefit from active help from another team. And this is typical for enabling teams. So coming back to our Wortley map, deriving the future team organization also involves finding suitable team boundaries that are aligned to customer-facing streams of changes. And identifying stream of changes can typically start with going through using the user needs of a water map as good candidates for streams of changes. And as I mentioned earlier, the bounded contexts serve very well as well-defined ownership boundaries. So that makes then the bounded context, beside good themes to split the system apart, also good candidates for team boundaries for streamlined teams. And bounded contexts also help us to optimize for team cognitive load by creating clear ownership boundaries, and this also us to limit then the number, size, and complexity of software system a team has to work with. And optimizing team cognitive load helps us to unlock the previously identified blockers to flow related to team ownership as well. And to be able, as I mentioned earlier, to be able to focus on a fast flow of change, the streamlined teams are relying on other teams supporting them delivering the work. So, for example, relying on platform teams, providing platforms that the streamlined teams can easily consume in order to reduce their team cognitive load. And that requires to identify services that support a reliable flow of change and can then be easily consumed as a platform providing self-service capabilities and reducing then the team cognitive load of the streamlined teams. So in our example, the infrastructure-related components of the Wortley map located in the commodity and utility evolution stage are potential candidates that are suitable for forming a platform that can be effectively provided as a service by platform teams. And besides reducing the team cognitive load, providing self-service capabilities also aims to make the cross-functional streamlined teams then self-sufficient and eliminates then the blocking dependencies of handover and decreases the corresponding high communication and coordination efforts between teams, including reducing wait times. So that is the external view where we have the teachers as external customers, but we can also derive now the internal view where we switch to the platform perspective, and switching to the platform perspective to the platform value chain now makes the streamlined teams becoming then the users or the internal customers of the services that the platform team provide. And the streamlined teams, they have the user needs of provisioning, managing infrastructure, building and testing, releasing, deploying, operating, monitoring the services of bounded contexts they are responsible for. And to fulfill these user needs of the streamlined teams, the platform teams then can provide a variety of platforms that the streamlined teams then can easily consume. For example, providing an infrastructure platform that enables the streamlined teams to provision and manage infrastructure on demand. And in general, these platforms can then start small, for example, with just a wiki page with documentation, with standards, best practices, and templates, and can evolve later into a digital platform with self-service APIs and tools. Or they can provide a build and release platform that supports the streamlined teams to build, test, deploy, and release the service of bounded contexts, which is itself then also built on top of other components. Or also, as I mentioned earlier, a platform can vary in its level of abstraction. At a higher level, a platform can also abstract a design system or reflective design system. And the platform teams owning this design system can then provide style guides, standardized design principles, widget libraries, and so on. And to operate and monitor a service, the streamlined teams then require dashboards, alert mechanisms, incident management, observability capabilities, and these capabilities can then be provided by a platform team as operating and monitoring platform. So the platform teams can then provide a variety of easily consumable platforms, satisfying then the user needs of the streamlined teams to make them self-sufficient in supporting them delivering their flow of work. And another aspect that we need to consider is for optimizing for flow of change is to identify and close capability gaps. And that's where the enabling teams can come in. So the cross-functional streamline teams, they need to cover a wide range of capabilities, such as software design and architecture, application security, user experience and accessibility, the testing QA, of course, software development, and much more. So that is a lot to cover, and where then the specialists of an enabling team can be pulled in on demand and can help to upskill the streamline teams to make them self-sufficient at the end. And the enabling teams, they also can facilitate the platform teams by coaching them maybe how to achieve or improve the developer experience of their platform that they own. How to design a scalable, reliable, and secure platform, and so on. And plus, the enabling team can also coach streamline and platform teams on skills related to product management, effective communication, good documentation, and also improvement of practices, for example, team coaching and mentoring. So enabling teams facilitate as internal mentors and coaches, and help to upskill then streamline platform teams so that they become self-sufficient, which also unlocks then the dependencies on people with a particular expertise to do something before the teams can complete their own work. So upskilling them helps them to make them self-sufficient. So that we are then at the end able to resolves our blockers to flow by combining Wardley mapping, domain-driven design, and team topologies as architecture for flow. And also helps us to, this domain-driven design and team topologies helps us also to apply some of Wardley's doctrinal principles. And applying Wardley's doctrinal principles enhances or enables an organization to adapt to changing circumstances. And at Domain-Driven Design Center is the close collaboration between domain experts and development teams, analyzing the business domain in order to gain a domain knowledge that is described in terms of the shared language, the ubiquitous language. And sharing and obtaining knowledge or domain knowledge through collaboration using a ubiquitous language, that also supports then the doctrinal principles of challenging assumptions to create a better understanding, or knowing the details, or using a common language for effective communication as doctrinal principles. And discovering the core domain enables then the organization to focus on high situational awareness and understand the landscape in which the organization is operating and competing in. And discovering subdomains and decomposing the system into bounded contexts, that supports the doctrinal principles of thinking small, as in breaking the larger landscape into smaller parts. And also the discovery of subdomains and the focus of development efforts on the core domain related bounded context, that also supports the doctrinal principle of using appropriate methods per evolution stage. Or also team topologies helps to apply doctrinal principles. So the doctrinal principle of thinking small in teams, or thinking in small teams, that is anchored in team topologies by advocating small, long-lived teams as a standard, and optimizing flow and reducing bottlenecks. That is the heart of team topologies approach. So the combination of well-defined team types and well-defined interaction modes that promotes organizational effectiveness with a focus on reducing cognitive load and increasing the fast flow of changes. And also team topologies applies the doctrinal principle of providing purpose, mastery, and autonomy. So the fundamental team types provide a clear understanding of the team's purpose, and optimizing cognitive load helps the team to pursue mastery. And the platform, the enabling, and the complicated subsystem teams, they aim to increase the autonomy and reduce the cognitive load of the streamlined teams. So applying team topologies results then in a flexible team design that supports constant evolution and adapting to changes quickly. So while Wardley's doctrinal principles described what to apply in order to enable an organization to respond to changes quickly, domain-driven design and team topologies, they help us how to apply them. So while we are applying domain-driven design and team topologies, we are applying some of Wardley's doctrinal principles out of the box.
So, Suzanne,
yeah,
you have plenty of time to finish. I just wanted to bring to your attention that we do have at least 3 questions in the chat. All
yes,
seem super interesting and meaty. So I don't know whether you want to fold them in as you finish up, but just bring that to your attention.
yeah. Please shoot away. So, what are the questions?
Well, it may derail you. Okay, so first number 1 is Matthew Taylor is asking, are there any specific tools you'd recommend to support this system? I was actually thinking of tooling myself, and you're showing so much of it. So when I was talking about tooling, I was actually talking about these canvases that you're sharing with people. They're almost explainers as to the next stage and why they're mapping and what they're doing, and I think that's really useful. Do you want to handle that first, and then I'll read the other ones as we go through?
Okay, so in terms of tooling, so there can be different tools, like, for example, to identify blockers to flow is like qualitative surveys, like going to the teams and asking them about like what blockers to flow they have. But we can also complement it with automatic toolings in terms like, for example, code scene is a tool that identifies blockers in your code or where your code is analyzing, for example, your Git repos and where you analyzing your commit history, where you can where hotspots are revealed, and where you might also bring in that reveals also unknown unknowns. While I do the survey, for example, with teams, that I usually use mirror boards and something like that to bring them to the board. But these are usually the known knowns, but addressing the unknown unknowns, for example, can be achieved with what code scene, for example, and something like that as tooling. And usually I am a big fan, like, for example, this canvas, I have not published it yet, but I would like to do this, like that is a mirror board canvas, for example, that you can use. And yeah, so there are different, I typically use, because in order to remain in the same media context, I do a lot on mirror boards for tooling, and then bringing in different aspects together as an interactive session with the team members as well. But there is also, for example, for software architecture, there's also the C4 models with commits, where you try to dive into a system, how the system is interacted, is the dependencies of the system, and it comes with its own tooling. So you can complement it for every context you want to dive into.
Wow. Got a Barry Smart. He loves the framework. He has, in his experience, he's seen some risk around putting people into new teams, new team structures, new boundaries, new responsibilities. And he asks the question, what are your experiences regarding reorg risk? Risks of people doing things like becoming disenfranchised and leaving the organization?
Yeah, that's a great question, because change comes with a lot of fear as well, right? And what I've seen so far, or how I approach it is, the teams that are affected by this are involved from the very beginning. So they are, we are working together, and the decision then who is going to be in what team, so where we have an emotional bonding, is deferred to the very last. So first of all, we start with defining the problem. So what is blocking us? So that we generate a common understanding, that we also, the common understanding about the urgency to reorganize. And then when it comes to actually reorganizing the teams, is then what worked well is self-selection, so that we know our target landscape, we know our target system, because we derived it together, so that it was not someone imposing us to us. Instead, we derived it together. And now who's going to be in what team is a self-selection process, but it's also dynamically reteaming. So there's also in the next slide that we, is the next slide showing? So that is a more kind of like incremental approach where we transition from the as is to the to be, starting with a team first approach with the reverse convey maneuver, where we then suggest then to restructure the organization to achieve then the desired architecture that we have designed as a to be scenario. And in an incremental with incremental dynamically reteamings in small step and involving the interaction along then the transition. And typically it's not a big bang, or in most cases, I would not suggest to recommend a big bang instead of like starting small. So having this target view to be situation in mind, how to achieve it with small steps. And that comes with usually goes very well with high level of autonomy that they can self-select in what teams they want to be in the future, but also being aware. So what I was also since also kind of like dynamic reteaming pattern from Heidi Helfand is that you can also at some point you are able to switch a team. So for example, that you say, oh, maybe I would like to explore something new, and you can also it's possible that you can switch a team over time as well. So that if you might have decided, oh, that situation or this decision was not good for me, that an organization also supports switching teams as well.
No, that's brilliant. I really hate to have disrupted your flow. We have 3 more questions. I'm getting a ping telling me that the room time is over, but my suspicion is that we can actually just finish up because we have a break for lunch. So anybody who needs to leave, feel free to. Susanne, I don't know if you want to just carry on. I feel like you're literally on the summary slide.
That is absolutely. So that I was blending in now the summary just to summarize what we have walked through. So the combination of water mapping, domain-driven design, a team topology that helps us to generate a sustainable value that is aligned to user needs, also helps us to unlock our blockers to flow, helps to focus our development investment on our differentiators that provides competitive advantage. It helps us to close efficiency gaps and aligning our teams and evolve their interactions to the system we built onto the strategy we plan. So this combination, in my opinion, provides a powerful holistic tool set to design, build, and evolve adaptive socio-technical systems that are optimized for fast flow of sustainable value and fast and constant feedback, and can also thrive in the face of future rapid changes as well. So, and helps us to build the right thing right in the end. And I also shared some resources, and yes, I am writing a book about that. Thanks so much for your attention. And I don't know if there are, I'm happy to answer additional questions, but I know that it's not time
I
for
see.
lunch.
Since I said that, I see 38 people in the room, which is the same number as when you started. So you have 3 questions. I'm going to read the questions, and maybe you can find a way to answer them all super quickly or in one. Rob Seringer, very interesting combination of frameworks, methods into a sequence or methodology for engagements. Did you define any metrics between steps to arrive at a final outcome? Kind of related to, oh no, yes. So are there also, second question, are there any Wardley strategy plays that connect or are reinforced by team topologies and DDD? Lastly, how has the experience been in keeping pace and updating the artifacts from this exercise in fast-changing orgs or environments? I've used event storming in a team and it's been great, but it's been a start afresh and a revisit. How frequently have you seen a review, or are there any ideas or metrics that worked in your experience? So metrics comes up as a theme there. I did actually wonder, do you ever clash into the old way of measuring things? So you've got people in a business saying, yes, lovely that you're measuring stuff in that way, but this is what our traditional baked in system says. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we have different like metrics that we can apply, but it's yeah, it's like the one that I'm sometimes reluctant to put in metrics because it's also it gives us maybe if you don't really rely dogmatically on it, like, oh, like for example, story points and then trying to compare velocity of different teams. I don't like it because it does not provide this clear metrics. So, but some metrics can be useful, and if you within a team to see how you're progressing, if you keep this within your team, like for example, the DORA metrics, specifically coming from the platform teams, or the space metrics that can help you. And also user perception. So for example, specifically when you provide a platform, yeah, in terms of like, yeah, qualitative measures useful. Yeah, so there's, yeah, you also like can have surveys at the end. So for example, when we start with the pain points and then when we target the future perspective is like what pain points we want to address and we want to mitigate and reduce, and to reflect that and then question it maybe at retro sessions, how far have we qualitatively reduced that metrics. And in terms of like updating the artifacts, it's sometimes it's good if specifically when onboarding new people, that is something that is a good opportunity, one of a good opportunity to update your artifacts. For example, when they can go through event storming session in order to understand what's happening in your business domain, or when they go through the value chain and to understand what is providing competitive advantage. Could also be on a regular cadence as well. So it really depends. Sometimes it's said that a water map is an artifact that you usually throw away. I keep it, but I guess it's your preference, because I keep it like specifically the to be, what we've envisioned. That's the one that I try to keep as a target and evolve it and adapt it or to adjust it when we have more, while we during the transition, and also learn from our experiences and update it along the transition. And the second question I forgot. So I don't know what.
I
so
thought
there
you
was
folded
one.
into the first.
Okay.
What did we do? We talked frameworks and methodology. So metrics between steps, I think you dealt with that. There was what do strategy plays that connect or reinforced by team topologies. There was the updating artifacts. I feel you've covered it. However,
Yeah,
I was going to make an ask for you, which I think will cover any parts of those questions that weren't. And it's not something I've done before. You've got a toolkit of useful stuff, and I'm not sure that you realize how some of the individual sort of frameworks or forms that you showed were necessarily useful. I wonder if you could follow up with basically just like a link bin, literally just a paste bin of useful links that shows some of the infrastructure architecture of how you do this, because I think it's super useful from a change management perspective. No, thank you so much. I feel really bad because we've had two people enter the room since we're being asked, when do we get the book, as a final question. And I really feel that there's some follow-on that will help a lot of people in this room. Just the sheer number of people that are still here 10 minutes after we finish says a lot to me. So really, really great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending. Yeah, the book. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I have to apologize. It took far longer.
Plug moment. No, it's all good.
It took far longer than originally anticipated, but I'm also part of a signature series where I have to wait in queues as well. So currently it's the last step, but usually I'm thinking I already thought a couple of times, I am at the end of the tunnel, and then the tunnel got longer and longer. So right now it's the last phase, like where last bits of reviews from Vaughan Vernon, because I'm writing in the signature series and he had just reviewed my book. So I'm on last bits, and hopefully, yeah, I can't really tell if it's because I'm depending on other aspects as well, but it's It's at the end, hopefully. But I must
It's
say,
in the
not this
pipeline.
year, unfortunately. So you have to bear with me. Not this year, beginning of next year, I
Well,
suppose.
I think the message there is to follow Susanne Kaiser, and everything else will come from that. So we'll find out your socials and anywhere that you post, your LinkedIn, whatever. And
Exactly. So connect me on LinkedIn, and please, I'm really happy to answer there some questions as well. And we can also hop on a video call, so that is not a problem as well. So I'm really happy to get your feedback. Also, what are your pain points? And so I'm also on my path of learning and learning from you as well. So, and also from this great community. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. You've got so many comments in the chat. I hope you'll be able to read them afterwards. Thanks for your time, for the incredible amount of thought and preparation that you put into that. It's clearly been a great session, and I hope everybody got as much from that as I did. Hope to
Thank
see you
you.
next time round.
Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks a lot for
You
having
too.
me.
Thanks everyone for joining and for staying over as well.
Bye bye.